So, buonasera, Cluj. Eu sou Rafael. Mulțumesc for being here tonight. That was all my Romanian, so I have to speak back to English right now. I'm sorry for that. And thanks a lot, Innovating Society, for inviting me tonight to be here. I'm really excited to share my ideas and topics and daily work routine from the Netherlands here in Romania, where also the problems we're trying to solve with FairFood, I think, are more relevant than in the Netherlands. I have a little bit of a sore throat, so I'm sorry for that if you can't hear me or anything. Or have any burning questions for clarification, please raise your hands. I know we have strict Slido rules here, but if the audience would like to learn more about a topic I say or doesn't understand something, just raise your hand. It's okay. So I represent FairFood today. FairFood is a non-profit from the Netherlands that is committed to ending poverty in our food supply chains. The big problem right now is that 70 to 80% of the food we consume in the Netherlands comes from smallholder farmers who mostly don't even earn enough themselves to enjoy a model diet. And that's why we are who we are. This is us, a happy team, as you can see. We love good food, like all of you here in Romania do as well. I experienced that, and I was very grateful for that. Also, Tudor's grandma prepared a delicious chorba for me. So I was really excited to come here also and taste all the Romanian food. But unfortunately, as I said, not everyone in the world can enjoy good food like we can. So the mission of FairFood is to accelerate change towards a fair food system, so the people who make our food can live in dignity and enjoy a model diet and good food themselves. So how do we try to do that? Starting from 2001, FairFood used to be a very activist NGO, standing in front of the supermarkets, trying to protest against food companies and supermarkets for getting a better wage for the farmers who produce our food. And over the years, we experienced that that was not a very efficient strategy. And at some point, FairFood, as what it used to be, completely had to stop. The funding stopped as well. The whole team stopped basically at FairFood, and a new management came in. A very small team, a very lean team that decided to, instead of work against food companies, try to work with food companies to come up with solutions that can bring transparency and sustainability to the food supply chain as a whole, and therefore have a lot more impact for a lot less funding. So in 2017, FairFood was the first NGO or first company in the Netherlands actually, to put a food product on the blockchain. It was a coconut, as you can see, with a QR code on top of it. And we brought 1,000 coconuts to the Netherlands, which we sold. And once you scan this QR code, you can see where the coconut comes from, which farmer produced it, and how much money this farmer earned for producing this coconut. FairFood got a lot of media attention when doing this, and last year we decided to move completely towards implementing technology solutions for food supply chains, mostly focusing on blockchain technology, as it's a great technology to allow for transparency in applications, which I will tell more about later. So before I start going deep into technologies and food supply chains, I would like to see a bit who my audience is, who I have in front of me. So first, let's start with blockchain technology. Who has never heard of blockchain technology? Two persons. Don't worry, it's okay. A little bit. Who has a basic understanding of blockchain technology and heard of it at a party, but you know, didn't really do this annoying uncle that keeps talking about blockchain, maybe. That's going to be me later. No. So, and who is an expert in blockchain technology? Who considers, I know, you know a lot about blockchain. Not an expert. Would you be comfortable explaining blockchain to others? You don't have to, don't worry. That's great. Then can I see some hands from all the people who work in agriculture or farming or anything related to that in this group? 2 people. All right, that's nice. Food-related companies or supply chain, logistics-related? One per, yeah, you can raise your hand again. Nice. You? A little bit? What do you do? Ah, okay. That's relevant. Yeah, that's food-related. It counts. Tech-related, developers. See quite some hands, maybe 10 hands also. Are there any other people that I missed now that didn't raise their hand yet? All right, so that's mostly tech, some people from food. That's good to know. I'm going to talk more about blockchain implementations in supply chain than food per se, but yeah, it's good to know. So you are all here today because you know the world is changing fast. Every day, every year, new technologies come into existence and change the way we interact with each other. We are moving from retail to direct online, from linear supply chains to circular supply networks, from product certification to product verification, from data autonomies, from data monopolies to data autonomy, and from digital payments to crypto payments, maybe, who knows. We foresee that by 2050, the large majority of our food supply chains will become completely transparent, so consumers can make educated choices about the food they consume and make more responsible choices. We foresee that global food production will meet the globally increasing food demands and sustainability demands. And as we enter the 4th industrial revolution, all farmers, including smallholder farmers, will become digitized, making use of data-driven smart agriculture to increase their yield, minimize their waste and use of chemicals. That's the world that we foresee and try to realize also with the platform we're creating. So what is the problem? There's at this moment 1.1 billion people without legally recognized form of identity. This makes it very hard for them when they're in critical situations to take care of themselves, to survive, to protect themselves and to insure themselves. There's 513 million smallholder farms, which support over 2 billion people, almost 1/3 of the global population, which produce 70 to 80% of our food. And most of this food is, until today, not traceable. We don't know where it comes from when it's in our supermarkets. Nearly half of the world's farmers are unbanked, meaning they're not able to get finance easily, access to loans, and that also means often that they don't have the means to invest in their inputs for the next harvest, forcing them to postpone their next harvest. More than half of the smallholder farmers lack access to various types of important information like market prices, means of producing more efficiently, using less chemicals, and this also makes it harder for them to compete internationally. All of this results in smallholder farmers to be up to 8 times less productive than Western farmers. So this comes from research that compares the Dutch potato farmer with an African potato farmer, in which the Dutch potato farmer can have 8 times more yield per square meter. And because of this, even though they have a lot of less costs, they can still hardly compete with, for example, the Dutch farmer, who is 8 times more efficient. So the result of that is that 60% of the smallholder farmers in the world don't earn enough to enjoy a model diet. They don't earn enough money to buy the food that they don't produce themselves, meaning that they have to eat the food they produce, which is not sufficient for a balanced diet. Meanwhile, the global food demand is expected to increase by 50% in 2050. So that means that we have an increasing demand for food while farming as an occupation is decreasing. It becomes less attractive. So this is becoming a challenge for all of us. Yeah? 50% by 1950 or 50% by... I was just saying that. To be honest, I think this was actually 2000. 2030. I think it's going to double by 2050, but I can send you the sources afterwards to be sure. So poor farming practices and economic stress take a big toll on our environment as well, because if you are in very high economic stress, being sustainable, using less chemicals is the last thing on your mind, of course. So there are certifications, of course. We have the fair trade and organic certification. The problem with certification is that often they are expensive and labor intensive because it requires a lot of administration. There's yearly checks, there's invoice checks and other types of things that need to be checked by third parties on a regular basis. And what you see is that for smallholder farmers, this is a very high burden. Both the administrative and the costs of this are very high often. And the problem also is that mostly a certification is a whole basket of criteria that everyone needs to comply to, even though certain criteria are not always relevant for every type of food or every type of region, meaning that for some supply chains, certain certifications are simply not relevant or not effective. So that is an overview of all the certifications we have today. You might recognize them. And we are opting more and more for these type of certifications because consumer demands in food companies is drastically decreasing. The Edelman Trust Barometer measures the consumer trust in different types of organizations every year, and also concluded that consumer trust in organizations particularly is decreasing a lot. Even in recent years, it's still decreasing. People don't trust the food as much anymore in the last 2 years, going from 47% in 2017 to 33% of consumers that trust the food they eat. Meanwhile, 94% of consumers say it's important for them that the brand they use is transparent about where their products come from and about the conditions they are being produced in. And 91% of millennials is willing to switch brands associated with the social purpose. As a result of this, Unilever recently decided to only continue with the sustainable living brands, meaning that any brand among the Unilever company that doesn't have a social purpose will stop in the next years, because they just saw so much more growth in all the sustainable brands. So this is an overview of the markets related to transparency and traceability. See that traceability markets, so software for tracing food products, is expected to double in the next 5 years. The blockchain for food market, I'll tell more about what that exactly is expected to increase 18 times in the next 5 years. I don't know if that's really realistic, but there's a high expectations. Fair trade has been steadily growing over the last 15 years. I think from around 2000 was maybe 3 billion until 9 billion in 2017. And there's no data on predictions, but probably it's going to grow as well. The online food market, delivery, those type of companies are expected to also increase by 2.6, a factor of 2.6, and organic food market is also expected to still increase by a growth factor of 2.6, reaching a total market cap of $323 billion in 2022. So many people are thinking sometimes, I hear like, is it a temporal trend that people are consuming more organic and healthy food? And the answer is no. It's expected to keep growing in the next years. So on the other side, we see that smallholder farmers are also becoming increasingly more connected. While only 20% has access to international markets, only 6% has access to an actual bank account, and only 10% has access to means of financing. 76% has already access to the internet, with over 90% access to a mobile phone, and 45% of that to smartphones. So there's a lot of opportunity there of helping those farmers. So what do we want to do? We want to identify and digitally connect every smallholder farmer so we can make all the food in the world traceable from farm to fork, provide the farmers with the right tools and apps so they can get access to information and services and financial services as well, and allow them to compete in the global economy so that they can make a living, and in the hope that farming will maintain an attractive occupation in the next 5 years, 10 years, so we can keep feeding the world in a responsible way. So, what is our solution at this moment? FairFood is working on a traceability platform that traces food from farm to fork. I see some people making pictures, that's fine, but we can also send you the whole presentation afterwards. It's easier. So FairFood is working on a traceability platform. This is the first iteration, as you can see. We work together with a Dutch spices company called Verstegen. And Verstegen is selling nutmeg in the Netherlands. It's a Dutch spice that we put on our potatoes. It's not that special, you don't miss so much, but we like it a lot, apparently. And we buy a lot of it, but we never know where it comes from. And on the other side of the world, there's a lot of Indonesian farmers that produce this nutmeg on a small island, the Sangihe Islands in Indonesia. And up until now, no one in the Netherlands knew who produced their food and how much these farmers earned for their food. So what we did is we traced the product along the supply chain, going from farmers to the producer, where they dry the nutmeg, to the distributor, who sends it to the Netherlands, and then also to the supermarket, the co-op supermarkets, who brings it to the consumer. And we trace every transaction between those actors. So you see here are the transactions between the producer and the distributor. And as soon as someone sells a product to the next person in the chain, we register on which day, which amount of volume, for which price, or, well, not at every level, but at farmer level also, for which price this product has been sold. So at the end, we can show the consumer not only where the product comes from and how the whole supply chain looks like, but also how much the farmers received for this product, so that they can know they earned enough to make a decent living. So, yeah.
Everyone in the supply chain is working with your.
Yeah. So basically. Well, you would say that supermarkets are not willing to cooperate, or that it's difficult for them to participate in very transparent initiatives, but actually almost every supermarket in the Netherlands at this point is like waiting to jump on one of these type of projects. Jumbo, a large supermarket, recently launched a traceability platform for their tilapia fish. Albert Heijn has several projects. So they're actually almost all large supermarkets in the world at this point are working with some form of blockchain traceability. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Any coin on the market right now is so volatile. You might end up paying a lot more for a fish or a lot less.
Yeah. Well, it's important for supermarkets to show that they're also responsible. So that's why they're participating. Yeah. So yeah, basically that's how we do it. We show also a video. So it's right away good branding, of course, for the food brand that participates with this. And this is how it looks like on a mobile phone. And if you want, you can all grab your mobile phones at this point and go to bit.ly/fairtrace, which, by the way, is not the name of our platform anymore because we can't use it. So, but yeah, bit.ly/fairtrace, so you can have an idea of how it looks like. So imagine you as a consumer walking in the store. You see a product with a QR code, you scan it, and then you reach this specific page you land on right now. Oh, no, yeah, Wi-Fi. Well, yeah, there's a password over there. If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. We'll send you the interface afterwards in the email. But just to have an idea. So you can scroll, you see who the farmers are, more information about their products. Oh, I see something went wrong with this slide. But what is the business case of this? Why would companies join this? Is the question, what is worth more, product with transparent information or product without? And as we saw in the research about consumers, there's increasingly more demand for transparent products. So that's why more and more food companies are willing to participate with this, even though it can cause them trouble sometimes. Becoming transparent, showing everything about your products can backfire on you. So it requires some brave choices, but in the end it can definitely pay off. So why do we use blockchain? And then first the question comes, what is blockchain? There are some people in the group that have never heard of a blockchain, so I'm going to try to explain it as easy as possible. Let's take an example with the bank, where blockchain also came from, the first implementation, Bitcoin. What we used to have is a bank that registers every transaction between people. I make a money transaction to Tudor, say thanks a lot, here's your money back. And I tell to the bank, send money from my account to Tudor's account. And when Tudor goes to the bank, he sees, oh, there's money on my account. Well, at some point we decided that having one person to keep that list of transactions or interactions, having one person to keep that list is not enough, because we cannot always trust one person with this list. So what then someone thought of is, what if we, instead of having one person to keep the list, divide this list among every participant of the bank? And whenever anyone wants to send a transaction, everyone has to update the list at the same time. Well, if you would do that with pen and paper, it would be a lot of work, but luckily we have computers and cryptography. And basically what the blockchain does is, there's many people that download the whole list of transactions on their computer, and whenever anyone in the world wants to upload another transaction, all the other computers check whether or not it's a valid transaction, whether Bob has enough money to send it to Alice or me to Tudor, and whether I am the rightful owner of that money or not. And if it's good, if it has all the check marks, then everyone uploads a transaction on their list. So this way, you don't have to trust any central party anymore. Everyone has the data with them. And now, so some extra points to that. Because of cryptography, no one in the world is able to change that list. Whenever everyone updated their list of transactions, it's immutable, it's there forever. And because everyone has a copy of the list, it's also very transparent. Every transaction uploaded to the list will be seen by everyone, because they all verify it. So another analogy I like to make is, it's like a Google Sheet spread among the whole world, where not everyone, or where no one is able to delete a transaction, but where everyone can see the transactions and add to it. I don't know if you're familiar with Google Sheets, but I really like to use it. In teams, working is really nice, so it's very similar to blockchain, actually. So why do we want this? Why do we want everyone to keep the list of information, transactions? Well, if you are working together on a platform where everyone trusts each other, and everyone trusts one person to keep the list, then there's no need for a blockchain. But what you often see in food supply chains is that it's a long network. Here is a simple line, but it's mostly a long, complex network of a bunch of people that often either don't know each other and definitely don't trust each other. So if you want to bring transparency about food products to the end consumer, there you can sometimes decide to trust one person with this information, but we decide that no one has to trust us as FairFood, but that people can get the information directly from the people involved. So how do we do that? The farmers, like we know now, mostly have SMS, even though they don't have access to a smartphone. So the farmers, we connect to our platform through SMS. By the time, once the farmer sold their product to the producer, they receive an SMS 4 hours later confirming whether or not that on this specific day they received this amount of money for this volume of produce. And then the farmer can simply say yes or no to this SMS to verify whether it's true. Once the farmer verifies this transaction, a digital batch of products exists in the producer's wallet or account in our platform, because we don't want anyone to have to deal with complex blockchain stuff. It's a simple interface. And this producer now has so many kilos of wet nutmeg in its interface and can convert it to dried nutmeg as it does in real life. So this way the digital batch of product follows the physical batch. Once it's done processing, it can send it to the next person in the chain. This goes on until the batch reaches the end consumer in the supermarket, and the end consumer can simply scan the QR code and see the interface that you just saw, of which it can know for sure that all the information it sees about every actor in the chain is actually uploaded by those actors and cannot even be touched by us as a third party. So that's basically the argument for using blockchain in food supply chains. If you have any more questions, use Slido, or a clarifying question, quick question, yeah? Okay, that's a good question. So basically, we make the price that the farmer received transparent. But we don't register the price the other people in the chain paid, because that's, of course, going to be a difficult issue in food supply chains. And there are actually many of those examples when you start tracing and making information transparent. It's basically very difficult to make the decision between how much you want to make transparent to not give all your participants a competitive disadvantage by sharing all this information, because a lot of them require also keeping some parts secret. And to add to that, what we discovered is that by allowing participants to keep certain information hidden, we can make other parts of information transparent, because people are afraid that, oh, if I share this, I have to share everything. No, we make sure only this part of the information is shared, and this part maintains within your domain. You can decide what happens with it. So even though we do make use of public blockchains, for those who know the difference, we don't upload all the information on the public blockchain, only the information that's necessary to show what you see in the interface. Yeah? Yes, we store it on our centralized database, like normal applications. So only the public data is shared on the blockchain in this case. Huh? Short question? If they don't respond? Or with a no on the SMS? Yeah, I get it. If they say no, I didn't receive the right amount of money. Yeah. So that's actually a problem we're still facing. Right now, we didn't receive any no, because this supply chain we were now making transparent was a very honest and fair supply chain. Actually, in the first implementation with the coconuts, some farmers did say no. But there's some things you can do in this scenario. Like, one, you can go to the purchaser and say, pay this farmer more money. But then again, what if the farmer lies and you force the supplier to pay more? So you can also, there are some solutions we're basically working on to do this the right way. But what probably is going to be is that a minimum amount of farmers needs to verify a batch for the whole batch to be verified. So we say 90% of the farmers or 95% of the farmers need to say yes, because also some of them maybe don't know how to send an SMS or make a mistake, say something wrong. Yeah, so we're trying to find ways to solve this issue. And it's likely that maybe in the future we'll change to a different system where farmers get information about what is registered, and only if they say that it's not true, they have to send an SMS to make it more easy for them. Quick question? Yeah. Yeah. We don't pay them at all via cryptocurrencies. So no, that will be the next step. By the time we want, I will go more into that in the next slides also. But Yeah, we don't do that yet. So once you make a supply chain traceable from farm to fork, and every actor in the chain has a blockchain wallet, there are many things possible among paying farmers in cryptocurrencies, which I will go into later. The first thing that we do on our platform right now already is claim verification, as we call it, which is we verify the claim of the food producer using our platform. Now, what's a claim? In this case, we use the claim that the food producer made about Verstegen, the spices company, said our farmers receive a fair pay. So then, if you have a claim like that, there's three aspects to it. There is a criteria, what is fair? You need to make it measurable, what is fair. Then there is an authority. Every claim has an authority. Who can determine whether it's fair or not? And there is a proof. How is the verification delivered? So in this case, the authority is the farmer. The farmer can say whether or not they received the fair pay. The criteria is enough to make a living wage. Now, what is a living income? Living income is a calculation of how much a farmer on a certain island needs to earn with an average amount of trees to make a decent living. So this is a very complex calculation which we made on the Sangia Islands to verify how much these farmers in particularly need to earn to make a decent living. And we're not going to be able to do that for every food company that joins our platform, but we try to make things measurable to see how much is fair, like what can we determine as being fair, because a 20% markup, as fair trade sometimes does, is not always enough. So then you have a claim, it's verified at the farmer level in this case. Here it receives the check mark, and that means that specific digital batch of produce is now verified fair. Well, this batch travels along the supply chain, and every person in the chain sends it to the other people. They might not even know that it's fair, that it has the claim fair. But because we log this claim in the blockchain at the beginning, it will always maintain associated with the digital batch. So once the consumer at the end of the chain scans the QR code, it can see this verification and can see when it happened and by who and what it was based on, basically. So now we use it to verify fair wages, but there are actually many different claims you can verify like this. Pesticide use, well, you name it, anything you want to tell about your products that is better than other products. I just received a bag of figs from Greg over here. Thank you very much for that. It's a nice present. And he told me when he came in, these figs are without pesticides, without chemicals, just free directly from the land. Well, if you would use our platform, you could prove to the end consumer that it doesn't have chemicals to a certain amount. Of course, there's always ways to fraud every system, but you could make at least more, you could show more proof and more credibility towards your claim rather than just the owner of the product saying that. I trust you, don't worry. Yeah. Exactly. So in this case, that's a good example because I now said every claim has an authority, a person to verify the claim. Well, sometimes the authority is not a person, but for example, an IoT device, a measurement thing in the soil that can be connected to our blockchain platform and can directly upload the data so that you can see that whether or not it's your claim is correct or not. So that's a good example. So as I said, once you are connected in the blockchain, there's many things you can do. The first most obvious thing is send money directly to farmers, where we can simply send money with all our fancy apps to each other on our mobile phone. Farmers and people in emerging markets often have to pay a markup of up to 20% to send money internationally. This is like thievery in my opinion, and this can be directly avoided using blockchain technology. In this case, the farmers would have to receive their crypto in their wallet, and then the question remains, how can they spend it, right? So there are several projects right now in development to solve this problem. One is Pundi X. They're implementing point-of-sales devices in small Indonesian villages where anyone can exchange cash for crypto and the other way around. There's also connections with mobile payment providers, which can also, they can pay through SMS, spending their crypto, for example. Sorry, I need to drink something. So this is how there's various ways to for them to spend it. And the added value, the added advantage of doing this, sending money directly to the farmer instead of making this person pay the farmer more, is that you avoid margin escalation. Margin escalation is when you give the farmer at the beginning of the chain 1% more, or let's say 5 cents more for his products. The next person will also make that let's say it's 5% more expensive, will also add 5% to his price. And the next person will then again also add 5% to the price. And by the time you reach the end of the supply chain, this 5 cents becomes like 50 cents or €1. And this is often why it's so difficult to increase farmer prices, because it just drastically increases the price of the products. And by sending the money directly to the farmer, you can avoid that. And there's several ways you can do it. For example, automatically upon purchase of goods, a little amount of money can get sent, or yeah, there's many ways to solve that. So that's a very interesting way. Then there's, now we're getting into a bit more complex technical things you can do with blockchain in supply chains. Who here has heard of smart contracts? Smart contracts, yeah, it's more technical blockchain. I see 3 hands. All right, so smart contracts are basically agreements between 2 people that you upload into a blockchain and will get executed automatically once the criteria are met. So a simple form of smart contracts is, if it is the 30th of December, send X amount of money to this person. This is like a structured payment in your bank account we're all used to. That's the simplest form of a smart contracts we already are familiar with. But it can be anything. You can make any type of agreement that needs a certain input for it to be triggered automatically without either of the parties being able to stop the agreement from happening. So so basically, there's different ways this can be used. For example, if I'm actually now going first to this slide because this is more related to smart contracts. So if the shipment arrives on a certain port, send X amount of money to person X. So what can this do in food supply chains? We currently need a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of registration of different third parties, administration. There's a lot of financial terms for certain type of contracts that need to be signed by various parties that are all part of a regular process of international trade. And basically all these agreements can be automated so that they don't need third parties anymore to be enforced, meaning the cost of doing international trade can be drastically decreased. Also, insurances and other type of third-party interventions can automatically become part of these transactions. So once the seller gets automatic payment of his goods upon arrival on the ship, and if it doesn't happen, the insurer can automatically pay back the seller in this case without having to verify whether or not something went wrong, let's say. So basically, by automating agreements in supply chains, there are many different ways of adding value for every participant involved. And having a digital track record that is verified and stored on everyone's device also allows for better cooperation and access to finance in general within supply chains. So as we now know, farmers have big trouble financing the next input for their harvest. So a lot of times they need to wait for payments to arrive, often sometimes until months after. And this causes them to not be able to finance their inputs. Well, in this case, if you have a connected supply chain, this food company benefits from the farmer being able to structurally produce and not has to stop his harvest. And this person already knows that the goods will travel at some point to its destination. So by having all these agreements locked in a blockchain, this farmer can already get access to the money that will eventually reach him through all these players. This is a form of deep tier financing, where by registering the goods of every party involved and registering all the transactions, the people at the beginning of the chain can already get access to the money that will eventually reach them, because there's now a layer of trust. They know that they have been producing on a consistent base. They know that that their digital batch of products, for example, just arrived at the producer because it's verified by this person and is transparent, seen in the blockchain, and therefore it becomes easier for this farmer to get access to loans. Also, in other ways, right now farmers mostly register everything on pen and paper. They don't have online bookkeeping. This also makes it very difficult for them to get access to finance, because if you go to a bank and you come with a sheet of paper, you say, here are all my transactions, look, I'm being profitable in the last 3 months, they're probably not going to give you a loan. But if you can show that you have verified income stream, verified by the people that purchased from you over the last 3 years, and you can show them the whole bookkeeping in the blockchain, that will become a lot more transparent. And also for trade finance, where you ask for a loan on the inventory you have. Most of the times this involves a lot of third parties. So you need someone to check whether or not you really have a certain amount of inventory that has a certain value, and then this can be registered, and then maybe you can get a loan for it. In this case, if the farmer has, or the producer or anyone in the chain has a certain amount of verified digital batch of goods, it can more easily ask for a loan for this batch. So there's many ways in which people can benefit from this. And if anything is unclear, as probably it will still by now, feel free to ask me more questions about this later. I'm happy to explain further. So to conclude, how can smallholder farmers benefit from blockchain technology? First, it can reduce the need for a middleman. Farmers can connect, interact, and transact directly with anyone around the world. They can prove themselves to be a trustworthy participant in a supply chain without needing an officially form of identity. They can prove they produce on a consistent base, and they can sell and interact directly with anyone in the world. It increases power on the farmer side, because farmers, all the transactions are now becoming more transparent, and that's how we try to use it, is by showing to the end consumer how much the farmer receives, meaning they get bargaining power. There's several ways in which blockchain technology can ease access to finance for farmers, as we just went through. It becomes easier for them to store and share product certifications, the claim verification. If farmers don't have access or can't implement a certification for their business, then they can still prove smaller adjacent claims about their products on a more simple way. It can address mistrust between farmers and cooperatives. They can get paid on a structural basis. For example, through smart contracts, they could get certainty about payments up front, so that they can know when they can invest again in their inputs. And as a relevance for the economy as a whole, it can help them ease access to land ownership registration. They can prove certain things that they have access to, or certain courses they did, or anything of any live event can be more easily registered, and especially for people without identity, this makes it easier to prove certain things about themselves. Sending remittances, so money internationally, becomes a lot easier. Different types of microfinance structures become easy and can be facilitated by blockchain, and they can store biometric data and communicate personally and internationally using blockchain technology. So this helps the economy as a whole, and therefore also the farmers to increase their position in the supply chain. So that was the presentation. Thank you all a lot. How much time do we have for questions?